Welcome back. Spring, it's a time for renewal. This year, that's especially true for our pastures and rangeland. Managing feed costs, recovering from drought, and rebuilding hay reserves are just a few factors that should give us reason this spring to focus on maximizing productivity and usability of our most efficient feed source. Cattleman to Cattleman's Kevin Oxner had a chance to learn more from some of the experts at Dow AgroSciences.
In order for producers to be more efficient, he has to look at how can he maximize the return. Feeding costs, some statistics run somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of the total cost, just feeding livestock. So when you look at use of maximizing production, you're looking towards producing the cheapest feed material you can, which is your forages. That investment in using a herbicide, for example, to reduce the competition, to replace a pound of weeds with a pound of grass, is one of the most efficient investments you can in order to lower your cost of that feeding bill.
Well-known extension forage specialist with the University of Kentucky, Gary Lacefield, echoes those thoughts.
If I look at the beef cattle profitability situation in the eastern U.S., the single best predictor of profitability in the beef cattle industry comes back to simply how much hay and the cost of that hay it requires us to get through winter. The cheapest source of nutrients that we put into our ruminant animals are nutrients in the form of grazed pasture. So the more grazed pasture we can put in that animal over an entire year, the cheaper it is to raise it. And consequently, the more efficient our operation is.
In Dr. Lacefield's area and across the U.S., managing drought conditions in 2008 will require special care.
Well, we've always got a lot of challenges in forage and livestock production, but this year, because of the extremes that we had in 2007, we're moving into 2008 with some real challenges. Our 2007 growing season, primarily in the southeast, was such that we had a Easter freeze, and then we had one of the worst droughts that we've had in the eastern U.S. As a result of that, we had very low hay production. Our pastures were low in production. We had very low hay stocks going into the winter feeding period. Our pastures were abused. Our legume content is low. We had a lot of rain in late fall in many areas, which in those damaged pastures and abused pastures and weakened pastures, we had a lot of broadleaf weeds come in. So we were faced this year with an unusual amount of broadleaf weeds. As we think about the 2008 season, I think we need to think about it from several different perspectives, and really we need to go back and say, what have we learned from the drought of 2007? And you'd think that we had learned these lessons about drought over the years, but this year was certainly unique. I'd never experienced one like it. And I think we have, as we approach this season, we got a tremendous need for improving our pastures, and this could involve the whole gamut from reseeding those that just do not have a grass base. We need to think about just establishing those. Another important thing we learned during the drought is those people who have an improved grazing management program certainly were able to survive the drought better. They were able to get in the drought in a longer period of time before they had to start feeding hay or stored feed. So I think we're going to see the need for greater grazing management. I think we'll see more interest in rotational grazing this year because of the lessons that we learned this past year. Also, we're going to need to increase our hay stocks this year. We have the extremely low supply of hay. Hay prices are extremely high, and nitrogen prices certainly are extremely high, which makes legumes certainly more advantageous and more important. And all of those can add up to dollars in the farmer's pocket.
When we return, we'll head back to Kentucky to learn more about how to maximize forage production. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's return to Kentucky and the experts at Dow AgroSciences to learn more about improving your forage.
Kentucky cattle producer Greg Ritter knows the challenges ahead. He already incorporates many of the practices described by Dr. Lacefield in his Barron County operation. The practices include rotational grazing and no-till seeding of legumes. Ritter says he's keenly aware of the importance of weed control.
Weed control in this area is somewhat of a problem. The more that you can utilize the commercial products that are available to spray to control weeds, the better. Those weeds take as much moisture from the soil and as much nutrient from the soil as a good forage does. So to maximize the forage, you have to really limit the weeds. You can't hardly sell weeds, but you sure can sell grass.
Byron Slew is a product technology specialist with Dow AgroSciences. Byron works with cattle producers, university and county level extension specialists, and other grassland managers to help develop successful grazing programs across the country.
Well, as far as important topics for this year, a lot of it is a carryover from last year in terms of the questions I've been getting. Because there's been a drought in so many different areas of the country this year, a lot of producers remember that they didn't have enough feed at certain times last year, and they've had to buy some very expensive hay. And so what I try to tell them is, as much as possible, we want to avoid those scenarios that you had last year. So we want to make sure that our pastures are in the best possible position to produce as much forage as possible for the upcoming season. Because of the drought and because some of these pastures may have been overgrazed or abused a little bit in that drought situation, we want to make sure that if we have weeds that have encroached because the forage competition has been reduced, then you go ahead and take care of any weeds that you need to take care of. And if you need to replant grasses, if you need to make sure that your fertility levels are right, you do all of those things in the spring when you have a chance to give your grass the best possible opportunity to be highly productive and be providing the forage that you need for the upcoming year.
Working towards goals of maximizing forage production, improving forage utilization, rebuilding hay reserves, and helping the land heal after drought is a formidable task. But, as Dr. Lacefield notes, one that is well worth the effort.
For every day that we can graze, as opposed to feeding stored feed, it's money saved. So we want to optimize grazing and minimize the amount of stored feed that we have to use.